Hi everyone, and welcome to virtual roundtable discussion on managing disruption post-COVID-19. Now, this is basically part of a COVID-19 disruption series, I would call around. We're going to have 4 series. So this is the first part of the series where we're going to focus on upstream supply chain. The second session we're going to have next month, again in the mid of the next month, which will cover the middle stream, and then the next one we will have the last, what we can call the downstream era. And then we will have the 4th session which will focus on demand. I know today everybody is talking around, so we are going to basically worry around how do we manage the demand part around. So there are 4 parts of the series. So today's series is focusing on procurement. I've used the word and supply chain, but that supply chain is nothing but the part related to procurement, because procurement, when we're doing inbound logistic, so inbound logistic, so that's how we are looking at. Now, I want to again thank everybody, all the participants. There have been a big overwhelming response for this. I want to thank you for your interest in this one. I also take the opportunity to thank all the panelists who have agreed to join us. So they're all the eminent people in their own field and coming from different sectors. So maybe I can introduce the name part around, and then later I'll come with a more detailed introduction. So we have Umesh Kumar. Can you, Umesh, raise your hand so people can connect you with a face? Umesh Kumar is from Reliance. Then we have Ajay Babu. Ajay Babu is again from Larsen Toubro. Then we have Brishpan Vaidya. He's from Uber. Everybody knows Uber name. Anyone who goes around. Then we have Chandan Kumar, he's from the railways, and then he'll be taking care of the public sector and SMEs. Then we have one more person, Vijay Anand. So Vijay Anand is also there with us, and he's coming from Tata Technologies. He's heading the procurement and supply chain activities there. I'll come to the more detailed introduction later. Now let me go through with you, I'm sure all of you have got the agenda part. Am I right to say everybody got the agendas around? So what we plan to cover up, can you post my agenda? So let me post what we plan to cover up. So this is where, so the agenda which we have kept for today, I'm sure you've seen the copy around. I'll start with the overview. And the discussion points which we are going to have in the overview, and some which will be covered by my colleagues, panelists around. So overview of the COVID-19 disruptions. When we say the word disruption means basically disturbance. And disruption has been done for many years around. It's not a big issue. But this type of disruption, which is, I would say, one of the unknown type, which has happened in once in 100 years. So this disruption is really a big one. When I remember the time when I was implementing even ERP, there were disruption because we changed the processes around. So disruptions are part of the life. But this type of disruption, when we talk around, I would say this is the most disruptive one as a follow-up to the pandemic of coronavirus. And similar thing happened in 1920 also. Again, that was the outcome of the pandemic. So we'll talk about the disruption, what disruption it has got. One is the social part. I know many people talked about it. So social means the lives of the people, the livelihood of the people around, the business side, some businesses are closing down. And there's also called social recession also around. Economic recession is one thing, the social recession is another thing. Social recession means earlier we used to meet our friends, go around in the parties, talk to the people. Now we are becoming more confined to the loneliness. And the loneliness is also creating another type of recession to our psychological body. So we'll touch a little bit on that. Then the next thing which we want to cover up, which most of my colleagues, the panelists, they will cover, the navigate the supply chain storm. So we have this supply chain storm because of COVID-19. And what challenges they have and how they're trying to cover up in their own sectors. The next thing we'll see is about the key insights for India. I know the one is a change worldwide. What we are looking around, what does it mean for the India itself? What impact it has around? I know many people have raised a question on the job side, what sectors are affected. I'll touch a little bit on that, but my colleagues will go more into those. Impact on upstream supply chain. So I'll try to clarify for some people, then they understand, at least when I say upstream, downstream and midstream, what exactly it means around. So each will be part of one of our disruption series. So this disruption series which we're doing today is focusing on upstream. Risk management strategy. The way we used to manage the risk, if I say pre-COVID-19, was a different approach. I remember we'll say, guys, what are the potential risks around? What are the probability of each one? Then based on the probability, we used to take action. Then I'll say, okay, the risk is very small. We can ignore it. So those type of things around here, it is something which are unpredictable. And even if the probability may be very minor, but we don't want them. So something like this COVID-19, we'll touch on it. Then we'll talk about is also, I'll also try to explain the resiliency versus risk part around. So risk, I know many of our conversant. Resilience is something more than that. We'll touch on those parts. And many of you have raised the question in advance, how do we make our company resilient around? So that we'll touch. So new strategies and paradigm. We all know and we are hearing it all the time. The word is not saying normal. So even when we get over this COVID-19, it's going to be the next normal, a new normal. So once it is going to be the new normal, our strategies have to be different. The paradigm of working, the processes, the procedures, all have to change. I know when I go to my office, I have to go through the security guard, I have to go through everything, all the guidelines around. So the processes of entering the office, process of working in the office around in terms of space, and even on our working side, we have become in the last 2 months, I would say more digital. So in the process, I think our mindset is becoming changing. So I think that is going to affect our business as well. So we'll talk about the looking ahead digitizations. Then the key to unlocking disruption. So if we want to say we want to unlock the disruptions, the only way is digitization. That means we want transparent system. We don't want something coming as a surprise to us. If you don't want a surprise, you want transparency. And you want a truth also. Then maybe some technology like blockchain may help you up there. Then question come at the last, are we ready to cope up with this? Now for this, we have got some poll questions around. So what I will do is around after I've discussed this whole thing around, which I'll take around half an hour. Then I'll have some poll questions, 6 questions I have got around with me. So those poll questions will give us some confidence around whether are we ready or not. Then later on, obviously, each panelist will be covering their own sectors in terms of challenges, in terms of managing, in terms of strategies. So I'll leave it to them. And then we have got some questions from you in advance and I'll share with them. So this is what we are going to walk through it. And before we close today, again, I will walk through few, I would call poll questions before we conclude the series round. The objective I look around from this 2-hour session, including the presentation from my colleagues, the panelists, learn the tools. How do I ensure the business continuity? All the processes around. The bottom line is future proofing. If something of this happen, which has happened in 100 years once, but then how do I future proof it? So I don't get into this. The procurement and supply chain, this is what we're going to do around. So let me start with a quote of the day, which I feel is still relevant and will remain relevant all the time. There's no such thing as business as usual. And I'll certainly quote you some of the things which I learned, I will say 4 decades around, and now I find they're useless. And I'll certainly share with you, so you can imagine around whatever we have learned, we have to unlearn and learn again. So that process has to go on. So business as usual, if somebody says, I did a smart thing, it worked very well 20 years back, it may not work today. So business and supply chain, metaphorically, if I say they're the time travelers. I think among the whole team, I'm the most bigger time travelers who has spent around 5 decades in traveling around. I can quote each and every example around. I've been to around 89 countries. I've traveled worldwide. I've worked in many companies abroad in India, and I can see around the changes which has happened around. The way we used to do 3 decades back or 2 decades back, and now I can say, and when the next generation comes, it will be totally changing around. So we are trying to see the risk part of today, but also in 10 years, and then trying to address them, which will happen in 10 years. Many companies, when you become a CEO, you say, guys, I'm for 5 years. If I start looking in the risk part, let's say I'm working as a head of the bank. If I know this is money is not going to come back, why should I show as a loss in this my time? If I show as a loss, my dividend will go down. My promotion will not happen. So sometimes risks are there, but people don't want to really project it. They say, let my time go through. So uncertainty is bound to come much more because the demand nobody knows. If I go 2 decades back, it was very easy. If I'm working in an auto company, I'll say my last year's sale was so much, add 20%, next year will be easy. Just do a forecast. Now forecasts are failing. So the new business model is required around and shifting customer expectation. Customers are changing. You, me, all have changed. In the last 2 months, we have become very digital. Some of us were used to going to the shops, now we don't go. We say, guys, should I go? Let me sit down and play. So our mindsets are changing. So we need to modernize the supply chain. Now here I will touch the word supply chain again. The word supply chain management came only in 82. Mr. Oliver was the one who coined this word around. But the word supply chain has been for 100 years. So the chain in those days were more of logistic type. I remember the time when I was studying in the US in 82, supply chain was much more of transactions, moving from one end to another end. So it was not really that much of a supply management came much more in 90s, I would say. The word was coined in 82, but it became more matured in 90s, I can say. But when the way we were taught around, we were taught supply chain engineering, actually. I remember in IIT, when I was doing my MTech, we were taught operation research, industrial engineering around. Those type of concepts were there of supply chain. Now the word has changed over the time. Now the context, let me put up the whole presentation context around. Certainly we are under uncertainty than ever. So we have to future-proof and make our supply chain resilient. So keep in mind, resilient is much more than risk. Risk may be the tip of the iceberg, which you can see. But resilience means unhidden around. Some of us have gone with integrated business planning. I'm sure I have met many companies in Pune, 1 or 2 companies. They were doing IBP, which is S&OP. To me today, S&OP is also having its issues. Because the demand is uncertain and matching it, you need ongoing basis. So we'll talk on that part. The world is very volatile. Disturbance are bound to be there around. So this is where I thought the context is there. World is a supply chain, which I never thought earlier. Somebody said in the good old days, the world is flat. It's a very popular book around. Now the world is supply chain. During this 2 months, I'm sure you must have heard every politician, those who never talked about the supply chain, they were all the time talking about supply chain. There was hardly a day when the news on supply chain was not in the newspaper. Economic Times was covering supply chain on a regular basis. So the term has become very popular. So I won't be shy in saying the world is a supply chain at the end of the day. You may manufacture, you may get something. At the end of the day, it is a chain which comes and delivers to you. Looking at the impact, we are calling it a black swan. The black swan means unpredictable event. It is not like a risk where I can identify it based on probability. It is a black swan events, and globalization have been unpriced and largely ignored. Now, I remember the time when I was studying in the college. I was in the Syracuse University in the US. That's the time globalization has started in the US. I know when I was looking for a job in Philadelphia, companies were closing down. They were shifting their all activities under the name of globalization to low-cost country. And obviously China was one of the most attraction. India also they were looking, but main was the China focus around. So those days, even somebody would have asked me the globalization, I would say it's a great idea. But today, now we are looking backward. Now we are saying, guys, no, we need regionalization. We need localization. And this is where I learned around from the Japanese company Toyota those days. When they shifted from Japan to America, and they were obviously believing in the lean concepts, they were still doing localizations. They had 300 suppliers, mostly in Kentucky, where the plant was there, while other companies were looking at globalization. So I think this is a big learning coming around. We hear a lot. I don't have to, again, explain much more on that part. So if we want to get back to the lean production, certainly we have to look back into this. So this is creating a wake-up call for us. And this is obviously having a lot of vulnerability. And we have to improve our resilience for the future ones around. Now, the changes, which are challenges which have been brought on by COVID-19, the coronavirus, first thing is disrupted the supply chain. That's why in the last 2 months, everybody was talking of supply chain. We were worried, even honestly, I get some medicine on a regular basis. Whether I'll get the medicine or not, I bought it for a month's stock. So I think luckily our companies in Indian culture, they were keeping a stock of 3 to 4 months. We survived. While in the US, people were worrying about the toilet paper even. So the supply chain was a big issue, I would say, in the last 2 months. So supply chain was disrupted. Shutdown of manufacturing. You must have seen many hubs. Manufacturing was shut down. Liquidity is a big issue around. When the demand is not there, the cash is not there. Sales have gone down. So now when we're trying to open up our company, the demand is still not there. In some areas, certain demand is picking up. FMCG, hygiene items, yes, it's picking up. But in essential item, it's picking up. Other areas going down. Then we have social and economic recession. Certainly this year, if you look at the economic forecast, GDP growth-wise, I don't have to say in the words worldwide, is going to be going down. Social recession, which I'm looking around, is a big discussion going to happen around when people are kids, people, they are not able to mix together. They can't do hugging to each other. They are just isolated with masks and distances. So that is going to create another problem around. So this is where I'm also calling social recession. Some are finding ways to navigate the storm. The storm is there. So my colleagues, again, the panelists will cover up the storm in their own sectors. But for many, this black swan could become a swan song. Swan song means once for all closer. So we have to look back. How do we ensure the business continuity back so that we doesn't become a swan song at all? So the black swan with SCM, I would say it is a very good example of a structural break. We have seen it. The area which are affected is auto sector, pharma sectors. I think I can go further quickly, which gives you this details around. The key insights, if I look, the industries which have taken the key brunt of it around, automotive. Automotive was, I won't say totally blame on the COVID-19, it was already started much before that. Industrial and heavy machinery, consumer goods, not that we can't make it, but we have become dependent on other suppliers from abroad, consumer electronics, semiconductors, life sciences, and medical equipment. So these are the areas which got really affected because this is the one from where the corona started around, they were the major one. If you look at the procurement index around, procurement manufacturing index, procurement managers index, we call it PMI. This concept was started around 50 years back by ISM USA, first time in the world. Because they feel any company which spends more gives you a wonderful idea about the strength of the company. Like you and me, if some family is spending more money, people say this guy is okay, it's fine, not worried around. Same way when the company is spending more money, that means the business is better. So the PMI index, if you look at it, if it is more than 50, they're doing reasonably okay. So this time, if you look in April and May, April it was 27 for manufacturing, 31 has become in May, services was 5, they are the rock bottom. honestly, when I saw the figure last year, none was less than 50. So the index has gone really down, but it's picking up. We hope soon we'll be okay. The next thing is relying on single source. This is another thing which has come to the notice. Suppose if I'm the head of this procurement or supply chain, I'm buying from one supplier, price is the best. I don't want to take a chance with another supplier because the price is more. Because I have to meet my cost targets. My company has given, the finance has given, guys, this is a budget and you have to work with that. So those has affected us. Supplier performance management system is lacking in many companies. And last but not the least is risk part and the matrix on the risk. Many companies don't have the risk around, supply chain risk parameters around. What are the risks around? And what are the metrics to measure the risk around? So the mindset which has been so far, let it happen and we'll see it, if it happens. If it happens, then we have our choice 1, choice 2, choice 3. But now we have to get out of if, when it happens, then we are ready with this. So we have to move from if to when. That's what we are looking around. Here I just want to touch a little bit, not much time I will take up. Just for those people who are not conversant with the term around, the whole supply chain I'm dividing into 3 parts. Upstream, that's what the focus is of today's disruption series. So you can see around supplier, upstream logistics. Then we have work in progress within the company, raw materials, production, finished goods. Then once the finished goods are there, then I'm doing downstream, going to the customer. So there are problems, there are disruption in each areas. So we thought instead of taking the whole chain, we may not do it justice in 2 hours. So we're dividing the discussion into 3 parts, and we will have experts in each one separately around. So this also gives you one of the company like Nike. No, Nike does not make anything themselves. So basically they outsource it. So they have a contract supplier. Who manages it? Procurement people, supply chain people. So you can imagine the role of procurement and supply chain is much bigger. It goes up to distribution. So there basically you don't have a midstream, you have a totally upstream and the downstream. And that is what is happening. And even if you think around iPhone, they don't have a factory of their own. Procurement and supply chain people are managing it. So you have only upstream and downstream. So this is how we look around. So the role of procurement is expanding actually. So it won't be, overall they fall into the supply chain. So the future leaders, they are the future leaders because they play the major chunk. If I say in a revenue wise, 70% of the revenue goes into supply chain. And if I say procurement and part and the incoming logistics is around 60% or 70% of the same thing. So once major chunk is going into the upstream, so upstream has become the major chunk of the whole supply chain. So they should be the one who should be taking the senior position as the supply chain leader. So the risk we have on the supply risk, the process risk, demand risk, and we have the network risk around. So keeping in, I think I've touched on this so I can move a little faster. Environmental risk is also there around, which I'm sure we're talking around today on the pandemic side. But that can happen because of other things as well. Terrorism, disasters, other things as well. Challenges we have on the cost side, supply chain visibility. I think this is becoming a very key thing nowadays, the visibility of the supply chain. Because the supply chain has become so big. Giving example again of the Apple phone, the parts are coming from 44 countries and 230 suppliers. So you can imagine around if you are a supply chain leaders, you are dealing with 44 countries, 6 continents, 200 something suppliers around, managing all of them for a product which life is only 6 months. So in 6 months, if you delay by 1 month, you lose your business. And if you buy more, you again get in trouble. So you can imagine the role is becoming so prominent there. So the visibility is creating bigger problem around. So if I want to get back to the normal, I know many of the people have sent the question on the normal path to the normal. No, really it is not going to be the normal. Let me be also with you. It's going to be the new normal and next normal around. So the very first thing, if I say, just to say normal, the next normal, first thing is resolve the business continuity. If I'm working in a manufacturing, my first role should be to ensure my continuity. If I cannot ensure my continuity, I cannot survive. So continuity means the basic things are there. And continuity to some extent come of controlling your funds also. You have limited funds, all of us. Cash is the cow, cash is the king, I would call. So you have to be very careful how to use the cash around. So I would say any indirect spend, you have to be very careful when to spend, when not to spend. So that will ensure your business continuity, the return and resilience. So once I've ensured the continuity, next thing would be, guys, try to make resilient process around. Then we look at the reform part. So once I've done the business continuity, I've done my resilience part, and then I look at the reform part. Certainly that is important. The reform which you are planning maybe in 5 years or 4 years, you may have to do in 2 years, 3 years. The time is very short. So the whole cycle time of reform has become shorter. If someone was planning digitization maybe in 5 years or 10 years, that cycle has become shorter. Then we have to see is unlock the disruption. So whatever disruption you are bound to have in the next 5 years or 10 years, try to use a digital approach to unlock them. IoT part, AI part, I know my colleagues will touch on a little bit on this issue as well, which are the key part of Industrial Revolution 4.0, or you can say is a part of SCM 4.0, can help the companies as they proceed on this journey around. So the new normals, as I said to you, has exposed critical gaps. Now what we need to do around is, the first thing is supply continuity. We should be willing to pay the premium for the supply continuity. I might be getting economical price, low price, and I show to my finance I have saved so much. But if continuity is not there, I'm not saving anything. So diversification. I know we have been putting all eggs into one basket. We have been rationalizing the suppliers. Rationalization does not mean that you could only have one choice. So even if you have one choice, then your relationship has to be so good. So you need to look into different aspects as well. Then we are looking around supply risk. Should be much more than financial risk. I remember the time I was in the US, that time, 2008, recession time, financial risk became prominent factor. A lot of tools were bought about, a lot of technologies were bought to manage it. And now I would say is the right time for supply risk. And one thing I have seen, I can talk about at least 4 decades around, because I've been actively involved in these things. Whenever anything becomes more risky, importance also goes up. Now, since procurement is the one which has to save money, which has to ensure the continuity, which has to ensure the supplier risk, I think the importance of procurement and supply chain will certainly go up in every organization. So this is how I look around. When there's enough money, procurement supply chains people are not that much respected. They think it's a support function, so it's okay. But when the funds become less, job has to be done, I think the procurement supply chain people role becomes much more prominent, I can say that way. In one way, it is good from that angle that your profile will change. And one thing, if you look at the history part also, I know we are going through the very bad time now. If you look at 1920s, you look around 2008, 1 year it is a bad timing, but after that, when it picks up, it's valleys and peaks. So we are going through the valleys now, but soon when the peak comes up, it'll come with a new color, new energy, new everything around. Coming back to the disruptions part, some of may be thinking that we have reached the end. No. What you had seen, the disruption is very minor. Now, once we are coming back to the whole work, and now we want to become independent, we don't want to become dependent on others, I think from that angle, you are bound to see much more risk around soon. So you have to plan for those disruptions. That disruption should not happen. Disruption means disturbances or problems, you may call it around, which could happen in your process, are getting around. Reliable supply is the new price. The wording should be, it is not the lowest price, reliable supply is the new price. That should be the slogan I would call around. Acceleration of more diverse supplier, I mean, not having only one China, which might have been supported by X or Y on the low price side, but now I think we have to think around other choices as well. So we need diversity around. So diversity is very important geographically. So we need that. And we certainly have to plan for disruptions and look into the supply risk as well. Impact of globalization, as I said to you, was a wonderful idea when I was talking around 80s, when I came out from the college. If somebody would have talked to me after doing my MBA in the US on this, I would say it's a great tool. And then I've been involved with World Trade Organization. I'm still involved with them on ITC. But now I got double minds. If they ask me the same lecture to them, I'll say, guys, no. We need to do regionalization and localization. Maybe globalization to some extent wherever feasible. So the same thought process which I had has changed, to be honest. So the intellectual property risks are there, which you might have seen many companies, when they give it to one company, will lose something. Offshoring, outsourcing, nearshoring. Now people are talking of nearshoring. Some people are talking of insourcing. So I think these words have to be coined around. And when these words are being coined around, procurement and supply chain people should play a key role, I would say. Technology is important, and image of the company and the product around. Procurement disruptions, I would say, in the post-COVID-19, let me quickly walk through this, looking at the time. Immediate action, I say map your suppliers. And I think one I'll take from this other point I've covered around force majeure. I know all of you make a contract, we have a clause on force majeure. And force majeure is going to be changed because many companies are given a contract and they are taking the benefit, the suppliers are taking the benefit of force majeure of not delivering you. Now question is this part of the force majeure, or should we redefine the definition? Because this can put you in trouble. If I don't get a delivery for 3 months, how do I cover it? The company will say, guys, under force majeure, I'm safe. But you need to reword it, resafe it. I would say look into the legal part of this as well. Measures to be taken, we should not be talking only the tier 1 supplier. I'm getting a camshaft made around. One supplier is there, OEM supplier. The guy does only the grinding part, unpacking part. But there's another company who makes the forging part. There's another company who does the cutting part. They are all important to me in the chain. So it is not the only tier 1 supplier, tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 also. If the forging is not coming, this guy can't deliver you. So whenever you're looking at the risk, don't confine your risk only to tier 1, go down to tier 3 as well. So force majeure clause, I've told you already. The next is the resilience part. I think this should become a part of yours, all of you. We have come up with a small game on this. So I think next few days, you can go to our website and test your own resilience of your own company. Like in people are talking about coronavirus, whether I have got the immunity or not, they test for you immunity part. Same way company can also test whether I have a resilience or not. So same way we have made few more games as well. I think Brishpan was very much actively involved in our maturity level. So we have developed a game also on that. The third one we have developed on your negotiation style. So all will be available on our website soon, so people can do it easily around. So resilience part, this is the one our game is going to be. It's covering 5 key parameters. So we have questions on planning. We have questions on transportation logistics. We have questions on your financial resiliency. We have questions on your product complexity and organization maturity. Organization maturity means have you changed with the time or not? So we have 5, 6 questions under each. So each one of you can give in 20 minutes, you will know very rough idea, psychometric test. So you can see one small thing I've shown, the risk and resilience. The risk is a tip of the iceberg. Resilience is the one which is coming unknown, uncharacterized, low probability events. So that is one you can see the tip of the iceberg around. So this is a framework. So framework is basically the process you guys have to come up. People have to be trained for that. Technology has to come around. So before you think of a technology, people mindset has to be changed. Technology alone cannot do anything. I remember when I was trying to implement ERP globally for 200 country offices around, when they didn't have a system, they used to grumble. When we got the system, then they again were grumbling. So you have to train your people first. So please, the people are the biggest bottleneck I can say. So you have to train your mindset of the people before you think of process and technology. Looking ahead, I'll just take a few more minutes before looking ahead. I would say you need visibility, 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 end to end. Think of if you're a working company like Apple, and tomorrow when we say we want to become the manufacturing hub, we are hoping it, in case we become the manufacturing hub and we are going to export around, we are going to be like Apple, buying from so many countries, supplying to so many countries, your chain is going to be very long. The nodes will be so many. How do we connect all of them? How do I know the real picture? So you need that around. So I would say in the last 2 months, whatever we have seen at home accelerated the global trends toward digitization. Parliament is going to do again online parliament session. So you can think around, the government is also thinking of digitizing the government process. Maybe election also become digitized. Passport is becoming with a chip around. So you can imagine the whole mindset is changing of the people. Governance also could become digital. So this is where I feel the functional silos has to break down. I have seen 1 or 2 companies, they used to have a separate silos for risk management, separate silos for supply chain, separate for procurement, separate for logistics. Left does not roll the right. So I think we have to club all of them together. If we don't club them together, we are bound to have more risk later on. So we need to leverage the technologies around. We need to understand them much more. I know time will not be much to go into the detail of technology, but we could have a separate session on that part around. So this shows you the digital supply chain where we need digital planning, we need digital supply, digital manufacturing, digital logistics. So this is where your existing supply chain is there. Develop, plan, source, make, deliver, support. So if you look at this one, we want to basically digitize each activities around. And the moment we digitize, our supply chain becomes, procurement becomes smart, everything becomes smarter. And when everything becomes smarter, it becomes like a control tower. So my customers, I have an ecosystem. So ecosystem of suppliers, ecosystem of my customers, ecosystem of my other stakeholders, all informations are going at ongoing basis. I know one guy has raised a question on demand. I think my colleague will touch on it. So this gives you a wonderful idea if you want to have the latest state of art now. The disruptive technology which are coming up, AI, RPA, which RPA I've seen many companies have already started using it, robotic process automation, IoT, blockchain, others around. But when we're talking about all these changes, people have to be, mindset has to be changed. We need people with big ideas. We want people with creativity. We want people who brainstorm all the time and think differently. If you're not changing, you're doing the same thing for the last 10 years, I'll say you're not changing. You have to change. As a consultant, when we go to any companies, in 5 years, if they don't change the process, something is wrong. So that's what we need around. Procurement consideration, I think I touched quite many of the points around the thought starters for the procurement leaders. Tighten the belt, know your spend, prioritize your spend. Build the relationship with supplier where you can get more time for payment because money is short. Know the landscape. That's what I would say. Old school of S&OP models, many of you might have gone through it. I think they are nimble enough for today's dynamic. Today's world is more dynamic, so you need to think much more differently around. What to need to recover? I would last this a few slides. Supplier development. Supplier development is becoming very important around to ensure the security part, agile sourcing, SRM, which I know, I remember when I think we were doing one project along with, I think one of our panelists, I don't know the name around. So we were doing this project around on the SRM. So I think it is becoming very popular word around. So scenario analysis around. So we need to do that. Supply chain planning. So with this, I want to thank you all for the patient hearing. So now what we plan to do is I'll take only 5 or 6 more minutes to just walk through few of our poll question, poll survey. So poll questions, there are 12 actually. I'll do 6 now before I give the floor to our panelists, and then we can take the last 6. So we want to hear you guys. I know you might have got bored listening a lot, but let me go through the poll question. So we want to see how you guys are replying, so I will know the percentage. The first is, how has COVID disrupted your supply chain? Reply. So those who have done the first one, the second is, where has COVID-19 has the biggest impact on your supply chain? There are different choices around. So we go to the next third one. I know it's a little longer questions. Which, if any of the following statements apply to your business? Arun, we can walk through the answers later. Okay, we're gone. No, we're going to the fourth, fifth. No. So question number 4. Okay, still people are doing 3. Yeah.
It's a quite big question. So people are waiting.
Okay, but I'm seeing a big response to all the ones. I can say very thanks again to you all guys. So question 4. So I hope you're able to see even the one previous one also.
Yeah.
In these choices, there is nothing right and wrong. Let's be also clear. But this gives you the right image of, how the companies are having the problem around. So if I go through this, I can say the very first one, some people said no impact around, moderate impact. Moderate impact is the highest one in terms of percentage. If I go to the second survey questions, so the second question was, where has COVID-19 had the biggest impact on your supply chain? I think you have said around decreased demand. Certainly, I can agree with you, except those who are from FMCG. They may put the other way around. Then we have the another ones. Third questions. One thing I'm finding very good, I would say most of the participants have answered for it. The one which, if any of the following statements apply to you, this. So the last one, I think, Arun, you want to read? I have to put a specs around them. So we deferred the payments to supplier as part of our supply chain financing. So I would say majority have come up with this. So you can imagine around the cash is short. So we have to really protect it now. So the fourth one, again, on average, how long does it take to source alternative suppliers? Many of you are saying 4 weeks or more, which I know is a long one. So the next one is the fifth one, technology that will help you to mitigate the risk around. So we had put a lot of technology which are there, source to contract, S2P, then we have got supply management, supply risk management. I can see around everybody, majority has given supplier risk management, and the number 2 is supplier management, which I think speaks wonderful idea. That means you guys know what exactly is the problem around. Then the next 6 is the one which emerging and industry 4.0 technologies show promise to help mitigate the future pandemics around. I'll say artificial intelligence. Looks like you guys are expert. I don't have to say much more. So you have already said artificial intelligence and data analytics. Great. Again, I want to thank you. I know many of you have raised up questions around. Looking at the time, I will not get into those, but maybe we can cover later. So I'll give the floor to our panelists. So we start with Umesh. We can show the profile of the. Okay, let me take time one sec to introduce our friend Umesh. Umesh Malik is a senior VP. Okay, here is one. I think you can see. Umesh, you want to show your hand? I think it's moving. Umesh.
Hi, good evening all.
Yeah. So Umesh is the senior vice president, and we have been working with him for a long, many years around. I've known him. He's one of the experts in the field of procurement and supply, and has got a big experience around. So I will not go in more detail. Umesh, you want to say, go ahead. And Umesh will cover the chemical sectors, oil sector, and plastic and all those things around. So he will cover his challenges and problems in those areas around. Okay, guys, Umesh, floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Batra. Let me just start sharing my presentation first.
Yeah.
Yeah, good evening, you all. And it's nice to see so many faces, especially after so many restrictions being imposed by the lockdown activities. So it's great to get connected with you all. I was asked to share my views on oil and gas and chemical sector, how the COVID-19 has impacted the business in this sector, and how the sector is responding to the challenges. But before I say anything, let me just, I wish to inform that the views, thoughts, and opinion are absolutely on individual basis and not necessarily a representation of any organizational group, committee, or for that matter, any individual. And secondly, when I was compiling my thoughts, probably I have used certain reference points, these survey points and data, which otherwise might have not been specifically authorized by its copyright owner. However, the intentions are for fair use for the purpose of advancing the understanding of the subject. So with these two disclaimers, let me just take you through the Indian oil and gas industry, snapshot in terms of the demand. So we contribute roughly around 5.5% of the global oil demand. And we are fourth in terms of refining capacity in the world. But unfortunately, despite of being fourth in our refining capacity, India is an import-dependent country. We fulfill 84% of our annual demand for oil and 53% of our gas through imports. And oil and gas imports constituted roughly around 25% of the India's import bill, as per the financial statement ended on 31st March 2020. But today, the sector is in the midst of a two-pronged crisis. One is the oil price war. You all know there is no understanding or agreement reached between OPEC and Russia and the USA. And that price war is still continuing. We don't know when the oil prices are going to be stable in the future. And second is, of course, the COVID-19. The oil supply demand imbalance, alongside the depressed need for the products, which are like stemming out from the COVID-19 restrictions, have changed the short to medium outlook for the sector. Now, especially for the high-cost producers, smaller operators, and the companies with having high level of debt, the challenges are more. Or if not, then probably they need to struggle more on meeting the challenges. Now, majority of the organizations have started responding to these challenges on immediate basis by indefinitely deferring their capital investments and optimizing or cutting their professional or operational expenses. Now, the word optimization sounds very sophisticated. Let me just put it in this way. Every organization in the sector have mandated to cut the operational expenses. The discretionary expenses are absolutely no now. Account payable liabilities needs to be deferred to the extent possible. Contracts are need to be renegotiated for downward revisions, and so on and so forth. But the good part of the situation and the only consolation is the fact that the Indian oil and gas industry is usually proficient in managing the disaster. And in past, the sector has demonstrated its effectiveness across the similar scenarios. And with COVID-19 too, the industry has done reasonably well so far by maintaining the near continuous operations and ensuring the availability of the different fuels almost across the entire country. However, the fact remains that industry is in distress, and the recovery, in my views, is likely to be longer and more protracted than the anticipated one. If I specifically look the impact of COVID-19 on Reliance, the largest private player in the Indian market, the company is not an exception as far as the COVID-19 impact is concerned. In its offer letter issued for the right issue, the company has made a very categorical statement saying that the COVID-19 has significantly impacted all its business operations. The refining, petrochemicals, oil and gas business have received a demand side shock, not just in India, but across the world. And based on its internal assessment, company has estimated that the impact is in the tune of around 4,200 plus crore for the year ended on 31st March 2020. And just to give you an idea, the lockdown started somewhere in March, so this could be an impact of very short notice of around 15-20 days. Right, and the initial figures for the quarter for quarter one for the financial year 2020-21 are also not very encouraging. Let me just take you through my understanding of COVID-19 impacts on supply chain disruptions happened in the oil and gas sector. And I quote ISM's survey, which was conducted somewhere around late March of this year. And the survey said that 75% of companies suffered from supply chain disruptions stemming from transportation and social restrictions due to the coronavirus. And let me remind you that the survey was conducted in March, and figures are only expected to get worsened in the current situation. Now, oil and gas sector is trying to grapple with the crisis and with an increased focus on continuing the business operations. Now, business operations, not only in terms of continuity, but ensuring the safety of operations as well as the safety and the health considerations for the manpower. But the pandemic has brought the vulnerabilities of the supply chain operations in open. And I believe there are four primary reasons for such a large disruption. The first reason for this disruption is China's role in the global supply chain. China plays a critical role in global trade as well as in the oil and gas sector. To put it in perspective, in 2003, when the SARS virus struck, China's contribution to the global GDP was roughly around 4%. It was nearly around 3.7 or 3.8. But today, the same number is around 20%. And as a manufacturing hub and major producer of industrial supplies and goods, China's footprints on these oil and gas sector supply chains are obvious. And not only in oil and gas sector, but probably that footprint is obvious in every sector of the organizations, right? According to the Dun & Bradstreet estimates, the 90% of the Fortune 1000 companies have suppliers in regions of China. And if that's a statement, then probably we can very well understand the impact of coronavirus on the supply chains. The second point, which I think Mr. Batra also have touched, is the lack of visibility beyond tier 1 suppliers. And again, once again, I take a reference of Deloitte survey, which was conducted in 2018, which says that 65% of chief procurement officers lack the required visibility beyond their tier 1 suppliers. Now, probably in 2020, these figures might have improved, but definitely this is a bad news for the current circumstances. The risk of disruption coming from an unknown and unexpected corner is more if supply networks are not traced end to end. You cannot just afford to leave out your suppliers up the value chain. And unfortunately, the guidelines and standards issued for sustainable procurement, so far in the public sectors, or for that matter in the oil and gas sector, or for that matter in industries around India, they are more on the papers rather than in the field. Resulting operations organizations, either they don't have a clear visibility or they have very limited visibility into their tier 2 or tier 3 suppliers. The problem is more complicated and compounded, especially for the public sectors, considering the need to follow certain compliances and obligations mandated by the socio-economical factors. The third reason which comes to my mind is, again, the supplier and geographic concentration. Now, oil and gas sector is very, very technology intensified sector where you need to deal with the processed licenses, technologies, patented products and all those things. And majority of our supplies are coming from either the OEMs or the proprietary suppliers. Government guidelines have mandated, especially the public sector undertakings, to go for the cost optimization initiatives. And probably as a result of that, the industry has started moving or rather started exporting the low-cost sourcing countries. And that makes, again, China as the single geographical location where the supplies were getting concentrated. So the dependency on a single supplier in terms of OEMs or in terms of proprietary suppliers or single geography because of low-cost country sourcing. And this trend is more into the oil and gas sector. So as the pandemic started to spread across China and it started hitting the other countries in the region like Taiwan, Hong Kong, Vietnam, and etc., the organizations have started realizing the need for diversifying their supply chain. And the fourth point is the lack of risk intelligence. Let me make a very candid statement here. And that statement could be true for every sector. We are not really proactively managing the risks, rather we are still into the reactive management of our risk considerations, right? And especially if I focus on the oil and gas sector, it's interesting to note that while companies have built elaborative operating processes to ensure and sense the reaction and react to the safety incidents, unfortunately, they have not necessarily done the same thing for the other business events like supply chain disruptions. So the need of an hour today is going for a step up rather than managing the risk in terms of risk management. Rather, we need to have more of risk intelligence through predictive and prescriptive risk management. But what had happened has happened. Now what? So debate is going on, and every nowadays you must be reading in the newspaper that Indian economy is going to rebound, is going to take its own path of recovery, and there are different opinions. Few experts believe that there would be a protracted recovery, which is most popularly known as U-shaped recovery. And a few experts are believing that there could be a fits and starts type of recovery. Now, when I say fits and start type of recovery, it could be like a speedy improvement to begin with, but with a future dip due to second or third wave of the viral infections, right? So typically it's a double shape of recovery. However, irrespective of the recovery path Indian economy is going to take, the need of the hour for oil and gas industry is to rise beyond the specifics of the COVID-19. The response to COVID-19 situation is on the short-term basis, but now we have to look more from the midterm and the long-term basis. So the industry needs to definitely focus on what could be now done to emerge stronger and thrive in the new world. But side by side, we need to prioritize our thoughts and actions for the medium to long-term opportunities which may come up due to this adversity. And then fast forward, building our organizational capabilities in terms of process, in terms of technology, and in terms of our people. Now, these are the three interconnected dimensions for any organizational capabilities. So let me just take you through. I think Mr. Batra has touched most of the point, but I think specific to oil and gas sector, the importance as far as the process is concerned, I think we need to secure our supply base. Now, securing our supply base is the prime most important activity as of now, not because it's going to disrupt our production schedule, but the focus is ensuring continuity of our operations for the sustained productions in other sectors, wherein like oil and gas are the feedstock or providing the feedstocks, right? So I was just referring to one chat with my colleague in one of the public sector under unit. And he was narrating his experience that they failed to consider the possibility of disruption across multiple geographies, which is like right now is happening. And the whole idea was like they were looking for, replacing the single source with the multiple sources, but they failed to recognize the disruption which may happen across the multiple geographies. Similarly, like one of my other colleagues from another organization discovered that the organization's contingency plan, which they had built in their risk management system, were not up to the scale, or they were too small in the scales. They simply were not designed for multi-country failure scenario, which right now we are seeing in the sector. So procurement leaders, we need to now play an active role in shoring up and strengthening the company's supply base. And in my opinion, there are the two ways: by scanning and engaging with suppliers beyond tier one to understand the risk and working together with them to remediate pitfalls, backlogs, and liquidity challenges. The another process modification or improvement, which I expect needs to be taken up, is unlock funds intelligently. Now, revenue is slowing down. Demand in many areas is likely to remain depressed, even if the crisis is over. So most companies will face a severe cash crunch for the foreseeable future. So creating responsible interventions to minimize unnecessary spends and preserving cash for the future growth initiatives, I think these are going to be the procurement goals for next 1 year or so. The next point is like technology. Most of us have started experiencing for the first time typically in our sector, work from home culture or digital connectivity are something which is like we all are experiencing for the first time. So developing a refreshed digitally driven procurement operating model and adopting to new ways of working with the internal customers, the supplier ecosystems, and external partner are the immediate push for the industry. And how we are going to do that? I think these are the 4 methods by which we can drive the digital procurement. Adopting to digital and automation solutions, creating real-time global visibility and insights through control tower solutions, using data mining, artificial intelligence, and machine learning for building supply chain intelligence and analytics are some of the ways by which technology can give us the competitive advantage for the sector. But the fact is, the organizations have to have an appropriate supply chain, intelligence and analytics platform to simulate future scenarios, re-evaluate the sourcing strategies, and allow complex permutation and combinations to be factored in while managing the risk. The bottom line is the organization must build resilience for the future, and they must increase abilities to respond to future challenges with deeper insight using the digital platform or technologies available to them. Last point is definitely the people. And to emerge stronger from the COVID-19 impact, organizations must start reskilling their workforce now. As I said, work from home, telecommuting are definitely the new concept for all of us. And many of us were facing challenges to cope up with these type of digital interventions. Is it like right now happening? So the answer is no. Even before the crisis, the current crisis, changing technologies and new ways of working were disrupting the jobs, and the skill set were changing. But only fact here is the coronavirus pandemic probably has made this question now more important and urgent to attend. So employees must figure out how they can adapt to rapidly changing conditions, and companies must have to learn how to manage the skill gap. So in my views, companies must craft a talent strategy that can expand their organizational capabilities to operate in fully digital environment. They can develop employees' digital and cognitive capabilities, their social and emotional skills, and the adaptability and resilience as far as the employees' productivity is concerned. So adapting employees' skills and roles for the post-pandemic ways of working would be crucial now for building operating model resilience. However, this will require a paradigm shift in the organizational mindset, because learning and employee development budgets are considered discretionary spend, and which are like probably subject to so many cuts. But my firm belief is that learning budget must not be seen as discretionary budget, but they must be seen as an investment as of now to develop the muscles required to strengthen the companies for future disruptions. Now to summarize, COVID-19 has definitely made the oil and gas industry to sit up and take the situation, review the situation, and review in terms of business continuity plan. And in my personal opinion, organizations must seize this opportunity to start thinking of pervasive changes that are needed for their operating models. Combination of agile mindset with long-term views, strategies, and healthy ecosystem will help this sector emerge more stronger as the dust settles. And the good news is there are few revival news coming out from the different companies in the sectors. And with that positive note, I rest my presentation here and wish you all the best.
Sure. Okay, Umesh, before I go to the next panelist, I know there was some question which was marked for you. I think you have already covered it, so I don't think. The first question was the measures your organization has taken up. I think you have already clarified it. Second question was about advancing people and technology. You have touched it. The third question which I had was, what is the method to create buyer-supplier relations to handle this? If you can answer that, then that I think sets the tone.
See, supplier relationship is definitely going to be the key now. Of course, it was earlier as well, but now is going to play an important role. Because in my thought process, supply chain disruptions are an inter-organizational phenomena. They are not located to a single sector or to single industry, right? And so no single entry has enough resources to respond to disruption effectively on its own. So a strong buyer-supplier relationship is definitely going to be the key. And this relationship can assist a healthy interchange between the supply chain strategies and the responsiveness, as well as will give us the flexibility, which in turn will help organizations to respond disruption successfully. But again, when I say collaboration, I think it has to be the supplier relationship management has to be based on the mutual business understanding. The first thing, that's a key. I mean, you cannot be arm twisting the other party and saying that I would like to take the advantage. So there has to be a mutual business understanding. There has to be a collaboration, and especially in terms in today's challenges, the real collaboration is basically going to act as a glue that can hold the supply chains together. And collaboration, in my opinion, is enabled by two factors. One is the trust, and second is the communication or the information sharing. So if we have that type of system, ecosystem available, I think we are going to have a good supply relationship management.
Well, thank you, Umesh. I think with this, now we switch over to our next panelist, Vijay Anand Chaudhary. Vijay, you are there. Am I right? Can you just wave your hand so people can see who's the person? Okay, great. Now, Vijay Anand is one of the most dynamic person I have come across. He's also on the board of director for ISM India and is a very active person. He was the one who arranged our one program we did in Bangalore as a community of practice. Very active person in wide range of functions I would call around in many of the award ceremony. And he's the head of procurement and supply chain activity of Tata Technologies based in Pune. He looks after Asia and Pacific. So, and he has worked in wide range of companies. His experience covers IT sectors, auto sectors, and he has also worked with a company called Excel. So with this, Vijay Anand, I give the floor to you. So you would like to cover whichever sector you are strong enough to go ahead. Vijay.
Right. So, hi everyone. Am I audible? Or okay, good thumbs up, right? So, it is quite exciting to see. Pardon me. Anyone? Okay, it's quite exciting to see that near about 100 people taking time during a weekend, during such times, participating and trying to contribute to the cause of supply chain. I think this is one of the good things that has happened. And thanks to ISM for considering me and to be a part of this panelist team. Now, I would go straight into the topic and I would be broadly covering the IT sector as well as the automotive sector. So I am able to see the chat window. Is my voice clear now? I think someone is pointing out that my voice is not clear. Is it clear now? Okay, great. So while we move on, while I'm discussing, the participants can post their questions in so that I can see and pick up one or two questions and address that as well, right? So let me now share my screen. Someone has to stop sharing the screen, Okay. Arun, can you help me with that?
Yes. You can share your screen from your end. You just stop my screen.
Yeah, I'm doing that.
No, it's coming now. It's okay.
Yeah.
All right. Right. So I wanted to keep this session a little kind of an informal and nice discussion points. Okay. All right. So what are the key challenges that the IT and the automotive sectors are, two different kinds of sectors are facing today? Very clearly, we discussed that managing supply chain risks has been a big point both for IT and automotive. In IT sector, especially when we talk about supply chain risks, we contribute near about 15 to 20% of the GDP of India. And suddenly when this particular risk came up, I think the IT team, IT sector was more prepared that they went on to go and say, okay, we will work from home. They tried to assure their customers that we can deliver our operations from home. And in order to do that quickly, whatever was required, I think everything was available within this field of constraints. And then we went and worked around that. But when we starkly look at the automotive sector, the plant has to shut down. That's the worst thing that can happen. And if the plant has to shut down, then many things have to move away. And imagine an automotive plant, where, for example, if you look at Pune or if you look at Gurgaon, there would be at least near about 200 to 500 ancillaries around each plant supplying various parts. Even they have to go. So obviously it was a very untending event, and then it was very painful event that took place. But obviously, after some time, when we are trying to open up during the course of my discussion, I will take you through what we are going through. Emergency supplies became a big key when it comes to any industry as a supply chain opportunity for all the procurement folks as well as the logistics folks. Because, and a small thing like providing masks in the operating floors to a very complex thing that how do I go and maintain a certain sanitization level in our workplace? All those things that are required, those emergency supplies procurement was really on the big thing for most of the industries and most of the sectors. Cash flows, you know, cash would always remain a king, but it's just that during these times, everyone wants to conserve cash because we are not able to forecast that how long this would continue, and we need to preserve cash to go and manage that kind of a timeline and those kind of expenses which a company would see. At the same time, there are dynamic changing government rules, both from lockdown, unlock to various import, export regulations and various other things that is really causing the procurement guys to be on the feet in order to go and decide quickly that what things we need to be taken care of. Fulfillment, obviously the delivery part is a big key part which all the procurement people are facing a challenge. I'm sure most of you will be questioned by users that how do we maintain a proper fulfillment to run a plant or run an operation or it would be as simple as thing like in an IT sector that, how can I manage the internet of my employees so that they have uninterrupted workforce working on our political platforms? To a very complex scenario that, will I get my automotive components to run my plant? So fulfillment is a big challenge, which I think most of the procurement leaders are facing today. Suppliers of our suppliers have not started. So the worst part is not our suppliers. The second line, that is a one line lower, we can say that in a tiered approach, our tier 2 supplier and the tier 3, where they have to go come up and make supplies to our suppliers so that our suppliers will be enabled to supply to us. So that is a big challenge because obviously the third line would not be a large company like any manufacturer or any service provider. They would be typically a smaller company most of the times, unless we are trying to say that we are procuring a certain chip where Flextronics is a large manufacturer which goes into a laptop and then the laptop arrives. That scenario is like near about 15-20%. But most of the times, 70-80% of our procurement, the number 3 supplier will always be a smaller supplier, and that causes a big problem during these times. Protection clauses on our agreements. These are the times I'm sure most of the procurement leaders have spent more time reading the agreement, understanding a force majeure clause, understanding price protection clauses, understanding issues around if we go and challenge a price protection clause of a vendor which is there, especially of a software supplier, then what is going to happen? If you clearly look at a software agreement, it would clearly say that, either you terminate or you pay the remaining part of the particular contract. That's worse. The software supplier is not ready to take a hit. When we look at component supplier, it would be very easy for him that I would not pay you any LD clause, LD damages, because it's a force majeure scenario. So these are the times when we have to go and read the agreements. This is one of the biggest challenges that we have today. Manufacturer resource planning is today very much unsure what do we plan for. That's the biggest challenge that we have. Today if I ask any automotive supplier, it would be very difficult. We do not know how many trucks do we need. We do not know how many cars will sell tomorrow. We do not know which model will be up. We do not know whether it's a SUV that will sell more or whether it's a car that will sell more. There would be hundreds of analytics in the marketplace. People will say that, because of COVID, everyone look for a private transport. Now, private transport should be a small little car or a large car. Some people say that it should be a large car because socially distanced people have to sit. Some people say, no, it should be a small car so that only one person can move. There are tons of things that is happening, which is making the MRP very much unsure about what we should be planning for, right? Typically, if you look at the IT sector, suddenly a business would boom with the banking sector, that provides IT services, IT company that provides services to a banking sector, suddenly, because there would be risks, analytics, everything. The moment those for 3 or 4 weeks go, suddenly the whole demand would go down, because then the banks would say, we don't have cash to have these extra services. We don't have cash to go and manage these analytic reports that you people keep sending to us. It's enough what we have. Let us run with what we have. They also want to conserve the cash. So things are very much difficult when we have to look at demand. This is one of the biggest challenge every procurement person would have. That if the demand is fluctuating, even the procurement supply will fluctuate. Now, next challenge that all of us have, which is very unspoken about, is what's next? Is there a new normal, next normal, like Batraji pointed out? And I would like to say that, is there a normal in the first place? Because we have to adapt to a changing situation until for at least next 1.5 to 2 years, which would move up and down. And the curves that we keep talking about, whether it's a U, W, or anything else, it's just a mere prediction that we have. But otherwise, how do we manage that particular normal? Having said that, obviously these are challenges, but is there any optimistic outlook towards all these challenges that we have? Yes, we have. What is next? Obviously, the first thing is get more agile. Procurement is a typical traditional or a legacy and a SOP driven organization in every company. Anyone who walks in, sometimes they say that you need not even have category expertise. Aap procurement mein aa jao, 3 RFP karo, you please do one particular L1 and then give the award, understand the documents. But point is, these are not those times. If I'm procuring something, I need to be a category expert, which I think I've been trying to point out from a good number of years in wherever I've spoken or wherever I've learned. Try to be a category killer. If I'm buying a particular laptop, please understand how many chips get into it. Please understand who are those manufacturers of those chips. So those are the things that is very more important for us, because then we can look into the point number 2 is looking beyond the tier 1. I have always challenged wherever I have worked and in various forums that why do we have to have this issue of consolidating suppliers? Consolidating suppliers, yes, it was important in a certain era, in a certain time. But in today's times, when everyone is evolving, when suppliers are bringing disruptive technologies, disruptive innovations, by having a long-term contract with a strategic supplier, we are keeping innovations out of our company. We are not letting them in. We are not testing those innovations. Second, in such times when there is a COVID scenario or a natural disaster, we panic because we first see what is happening to our supplier. Is he alive or not? But if we had alternatives, then things could have been a little more workable, or we can use the right word is we could have been more resilient. So to think beyond the tier 1, ensure that we are category experts in whatever we procure. Learn more about the category and improve those. The next one is developing alternatives. Supplier development in any supply management course or in any supply management career is very important. But I must be very honest, and I would take this point of courage to tell all of us read supplier development a lot in books and papers, but how many of us really develop suppliers in the marketplace? How many of us in our during 8 hours of work have spent at least 1 hour looking for a new supplier at the marketplace, trying to develop them, walking into their factories, walking into their business environments and see what they are doing, what they are innovating, how we can help them so that they become our suppliers. Those kind of activities, I think we do very less. This is the time that we are suffering because of it. But is there a start to it? Yes, there is a start to it. We have to put a start to this. If we do this, we while we say that China is the factory of the world, but if we develop suppliers, we will slowly start building our factories. This is very important. All of us, and at least I would wish that of the 100 people, when we go back, at least 20, 30 of us walk down into the marketplace and try to develop suppliers for ourselves and locally. Joint cash management propositions. We are very much quick and smart to say that let's conserve cash for ourselves and let's work. But at the same time, please look at your suppliers. How cash is important for your supplier. If we try to save ourselves and it means that we kill our suppliers because they would be running out of cash, would make it very difficult. So understand the key positions of at least your strategic suppliers and develop a joint cash management propositions. This is more important. Spread the risk. Let us not try to say that let me be risk free and let me put someone else in my ecosystem, in my supply chain, put him on risk. Don't do that. Spread that risk. Next is help the supplier to start once again. I mean, these are times when we need to go and help our suppliers to start their industries, start their workshops, start their deliveries once again. Understand what help do they need. If there is something possible, please do that. Please walk that extra mile. Rewrite the short-term contracts. There would be long-term contracts which me and the supplier cannot walk away from. But we can always tell that these are tough times. These are unprecedented times. During these times, only for this time, maybe like, make an assessment period, like 6 months or 1 year, make a special contract for this and put a stop to the existing contract. And then again, restart the contract at a later point so that the supplier and the manufacturer can live very cohesively during these tough times and work together in these tough times. Exit clause, and how do we exit is a appropriate thing where we need to draft appropriately, at least now, if not what we did in the past. So these are some of the key basics which I thought, while we can talk about strategies, but these are some small little tactical things which are very important for these unprecedented times. That's why what I felt is these need to be brought up and discussed. Now, very clear that how automotive sector would really look like, in a pre-COVID era and in a post-COVID era. It's very clean and clear that localized production networks are very important. Local supply chain networks are important. And we need to build where we sell. But if you have to do this, can we do this right now? I find it very difficult. But can we go ahead and develop and walk the steps so that at least 1.5, 2 years from now, we can go ahead and build this? Most of us will try to question each other that, do we have local expertise to go ahead and meet all our demands? The answer is no. But can they build it? Yes. But yesterday, if we are thinking that we are 10 years away from getting that particular benchmark or quality of material that we have been importing, I would say that that time is shortened and it could be as short as 1 year. Try to develop suppliers, try to develop local expertise, help them and help yourself. So that's how we build a sustainable risk management portfolio. Now, like Bhadraji clearly pointed out, while globalization is key, these are the times when we share global knowledge, global practice, but at the same time, try to improve certain local competencies so that we survive peacefully. Otherwise, it becomes very difficult. Otherwise, we become a too dependent on economy or too dependent on organization. So now, moving on, very small thing here that what we should be doing. While we do a lot of other strategic things, there are two soft aspects that I want to touch about. We need to be very empathetic at these times where we really need to understand our supplier issues, our supplier problems as well when we are trying to see what is happening within our organization or the strategies we are adopting in order to survive this event. Strongly aligned to the organization. This is more from an individualistic nature that, we as procurement fraternity, most of the times we always waited that when instructed to purchase, we would go and do some purchase. Or when instructed, we need to go and do a certain activity. But if we align to the organization, these are the times when we have to go back to the community within our organization, whether it's a user, whether it's a finance, whether it's marketing, whether it's sales, and align with them and understand and try to give them an outside in approach. At the same time, try to understand their problems and go and devise the appropriate strategies within our system. These are the times of strong alignment. Otherwise, give or take, we might be looked at as a support function, and we might be the function which also is more vulnerable for cost cutting, and we might also lose our jobs. So it's very, very important for us that we need to align with the organization. Help the ecosystems to start. These are times when things are very much at standstill or slowly trying to pick up. In the process of picking up, there are many people who would fall down. We need to go and help each other and pick that particular ecosystem. Always live in the detail, as I spoke. Whether it's you being a category expert, you may be a financial expert, you need to manage your cash. Be in the detail. These are not the times when we can just be 30,000 feet above the ground to run our operations. Keep cash in mind. Reskill, bring agility. These are the times while we speak that a lot of digitalization has to come into procurement, AI, ML, all those things have to come in, but these are the times most of the companies will not have the budget for it. Let's be honest about it. But having said that, can we go ahead and do those few things extra? Can I go ahead and analyze a market on my own? Can I go ahead and understand what's happening in the international markets? Can I see something different? Can I work on certain statistics and data that I have? Yes, one can do it yourself. You don't need a lot of tools and technology around it. What tools and technology can achieve, we also can do a few things ourselves. Let's try to focus on that and reskill ourselves. Now, on terms of strategy, if we challenge exactly opposite about what we did in our past or in our yesterday strategies, they hold the answers to our future. For example, a simple thing that we have been discussing over the past one hour that, the tier one, is there only a tier one supplier? No, let's go ahead and see whether we can work with more suppliers. That's a basic thing. But looking at the pricing and a cash strange, we say that, okay, we need to have long-term contracts. We need to have price economies of scale. These are not the times of economies of scale. Just think exactly opposite, that how I can buy less and at a lower price, but can I pay a little more as long as the fulfillment is more important for us. So bring in, try to question yourself all that we did yesterday so that those hold answers for tomorrow. So with this, these were a few of the things that I wanted to share. And any questions that I can see in the chat? Oh, okay.
I think Vijayanand, I think we are short of time. Maybe
Right, it's okay, no problem. So,
if you got some one or two questions, you can take up immediately, and then we can switch over.
right, okay.
Have you got anything question immediately? Maybe you can answer on the AI part since you talked about it.
Yeah, okay. So,
people are asking how is it going to take away the job or something, and when is it going to be implemented? So something,
yeah.
that's a question for many people. Go ahead.
Right. So AI and ML and digital interventions will continue to happen. And I would say in certain sectors, it would be more aggressive. For example, in a manufacturing plant where there were many people working on a single work shop floor, because of social distancing and because of the risk that we carry, there would be more robotics, there would be more digitization that would come in. If you talk about service organization, a lot of service points would close, which would be the end points or customer facing points, and they would be serviced from the back end. So once again, digitalization is going to come a big way. All these things are going to happen. Jobs would be requested and redefined. I would not say that jobs would go away, because jobs would be of different kind and a different nature in tomorrow's market and tomorrow's technology. I feel we all should go ahead and learn those few things. Like, even me and myself, over this time, I thought, let me go ahead and do a master's degree in AI and ML. So these are the times there is nothing wrong in saying that, can I start learning something new so that I can meet tomorrow's demands? So these are more important rather than feeling the jobs are going to go away. But AI and ML and digitalization in any field is bound to happen, and it's going to happen.
Super. Thanks again, Vijayanand. Thanks, everyone. I think if any question comes later, looking at the time, we will be able to answer separately, either through the email or something.
Yeah, sure.
I think we can take up later. Now we switch over to our next panelist, Mr. Chandan Kumar. And Chandan Kumar, can you just show the hand around so people know who's the person? Yeah, Chandan Kumar is the general manager with the railways, and he has been my college mate, you can say, from IIT Delhi, and he has done CPSM certified. You talk of any certification, PMI, he is certified with all the global certification. His experience runs a lot, I would say, in dealing with the medical item, dealing with the railway items, dealing with the public sector, SME, and he'll cover those sectors around. So with this, Chandan, you want to go ahead? Yeah, Chandan, floor is yours. Go ahead. I think you're muted or what? Go ahead, Chandan. Yeah, just upload the file, yeah, wherever you want to share.
So I think the file is visible now. So I will just cover, I will very briefly, because the time is very short, so I will very briefly cover the public sector working, in fact, the pharmaceutical sector and the MSE sector.
Yep.
So in the public sector, actually, our working has drastically changed over this. I mean, this COVID-19, it has forced us to change, and it involved a lot of paperwork. I mean, as you all know, government working involves a lot of documentation, lot of paperwork. So now we are moving from, this paper full working to a paperless working. So how are we doing this? So this is through from shifting to e-tendering. I mean, till now, if you see the central public procurement portal, if you see all the portal where government bids the bidding process is done. So the thing is that the bid is uploaded on the website, it is downloaded from the website in a secure and transparent manner. But the whole tendering process, the whole bid evaluation report process, the bid evaluation meeting, deciding who is the lowest and who is the most economical advantageous tender. So all these are done offline, not online. So we are now in the phase of shifting from e-tendering to e-procurement. That is, indent will come through the electronic mode, and the whole tendering process will be done through the electronic mode. The whole decision will be conveyed, the whole noting will be prepared online, digital signature, encrypted digital signature class 3 will be utilized by all the bid evaluation committee members, and even the online sharing of the notice of award, online collection of performance bank guarantees, and till electronic payment. So everything will become online. So Indian Railway e-procurement system has developed such process whereby this whole process can be seamlessly integrated, and with the help of Central Railway Information System, CRIS, such a platform has been developed, and slowly we will be, the entire government working will be shifting to e-procurement. I mean, earlier it was e-tendering, now it will be end-to-end e-procurement in a digitized mode. Now the whole filing has changed. So now we have shifted from our routine filing system to National Informatics Center e-office documentation system. So all the filing is done on the electronic format. The noting is done electronically, and the approval are done electronically. Now, I think a lot of questions have been asked regarding the force majeure, how we can protect the government. So there are certain terms which we need to incorporate in our tender document. Till now, the force majeure, we were, including that whatever is unforeseen and unforeseeable by the supplier, then that can be considered as force majeure. But now some terms like what is the time to recover for a particular supplier uh, if he faces a black swan event. So this aspect will be taken care of if we mention that the minimum time to recovery for the supplier will be these many days. This time to recovery, how much we can incorporate, depends upon what will be our organization time to survive, because no organization can survive indefinitely without its suppliers. So uh, through a data modeling process, we will have to first analyze in our organization what is our time to survive, and then we will have to quantify that what will be the time to recover for the supplier, which we can bear, so that the loss to the government in all its operations is not beyond irreparable. Now, as we all see that the training and meetings in this era of COVID-19 all are through video conferencing webinars. In fact, some of the government agencies, like we are now the inspecting agencies for all the railway procurements, and even some of the private players. So what we are doing, that in this era where we cannot fly to China, we cannot do inspection to the supplier at its factory premises, we are arranging video conferencing through webinars, through video conferencing, through online video, through mobile. We are switching on camera mode, and then inspecting the materials, all this thing. And in this thing, what we require more is the suppliers' cooperation. How can this come? Through the intelligent pathways, by integrating Internet of Things into the supplier's supply chain. If the supplier includes the digitized sensors in its production process, and if such IoT devices transfers the real-time data during the supplier production process to the procurer, then such an inspection will not be required, because we will be aware through all the IoT devices data that the whole supply supply process of the at the supplier premises has worked out fantastically, and we need not do inspection. So slowly and slowly we will see that this inspection will be phasing out from the government procurement, and we will be more focusing on our attention to the data that is available from the supplier. We will try to integrate more, collaborate more with the supplier, so that all data can flow seamlessly, and we can work on those things. Now, GEM4 is a new initiative, so anyone who is interested, he can visit the GEM4 website. Actually, the time is short, so I will just be covering the basic details. So yes, government e-marketplace. It is a initiative of the central government where all the general items they are covered through GEM portal, and and now a lot of data analytics and a lot of details are included in the GEM. So if you are further interested, you can visit the GEM portal for more details. Now, what is the future of government working? From this, we see that work from home will become a part. It will be a choice for some. It will be a necessity for some of the persons, because we don't know what further will come. I mean, the situation is really very volatile, and use of mobile apps even in government working. So apps will also be you know uh, it will be synergistically coupling with all the devices. Now Internet of Things, blockchain, machine learning, artificial intelligence, supply chain analytics, big data, slowly by slowly, even due to compulsion also, these all things will be forced inside the government working, and we have to go ahead with this. So I will move quickly to the pharmaceutical sector. We know that 80% of the raw material, or the starting raw material, or the active pharmaceutical ingredient for the pharmaceutical sector comes from China. Now this COVID-19 has led to a raw material shortage. So even the manufacturers who are located in India, they are facing sort of the supply. Migration of semi-skilled and non-skilled labor in these times of COVID-19 had led to labor shortage, not only in the mainstream industry, but also in the ancillary industries like packaging, bottling, label printing, and loading, unloading, logistics. So all these have led to lot of problems. So the entire production plan in the pharmaceutical sector has been held down due to non-availability of essential low value items. Like suppose the whole batch is around 50 lakh rupees, but one small printing machine which is required to print the expiry date and manufacturing date and the batch number in each batch, that is not arriving from an MSME or a small firm. So the whole process, it gets delayed, or it gets halted. Logistics and transportation issues are there. Even the transportation and courier services, they are not sure when the goods will be delivered. The government of India has diverted funds to more essential works. So all the suppliers who had supplied either in the national AIDS project or in some other project of the government or in the health sector, apart from coronavirus, the whole fund has been shifted more to coronavirus. So there is less liquidity available, and hence there is delay in the supplier payment. So this is creating a lot of problems. Then the regular difficulty in conducting factory and manufacturing plant inspection, which I have already covered earlier. So this is the scenario, and all these things we can address through seamlessly integrating now artificial intelligence, data analytics, real-time integration of ERP, and all these things are possible. Because time is running short, I will be very focused. Let us look at the MSME sector. So here in MSME sector, the government has recently changed the criteria to classify MSME from investment in plant and machinery to annual turnover. And we will see that the same problems what we are in the pharmaceutical industry repercutes here as well, because the supplier is a supplier. We are focusing now on the upstream supply chain. So we are also looking at the delay in payment to MSME, low liquidity, less rotation of money. Government has come out with several initiatives like the e-Samadhan portal. Those of you who are from MSME, they can go to MSME Samadhan portal or MSME Sambandh portal and look at all the facilities that are available there, and how the government is trying to increase transparency of all the public sector undertaking with the MSMEs, and how the government has recently increased the loan facilities. But yes, one of the major roadblocks now is that the labor is in shortage. So in this COVID-19 times, around 30% of the MSME, we understand that it is a sorry state of affairs, and they might go out of business, but still the government is trying level best to protect their interest, whatever can be done. Now, the acquiring new skill set is a necessity, I will say, because MSME sector also, they need to develop, apart from all this, they need to be more e-sensitized towards whatever can be done electronically. And in fact, in government working, we are doing most of the things electronically, except for payments, because payment system are not, our finance department requires documents in hard copy, duly sealed and signed. So, I mean, this attitude will take some time to change. So now I will focus with this. My presentation is has ended. However, some of the questions that were asked, I will focus on some of those questions. Now, one of the question raised by Mr. Gudunath was procurement of works and international competitive bidding. So he was asking regarding the schedule banks. So the submission of PSBG can be done from any schedule bank, schedule A, B, C, and this and this thing should be incorporated in the tender document which you have floated. Now, the international competitive bidding, actually the PSBG process in ICB is a bit more difficult, because outside agencies, the bank from other countries, they are issuing the instruments which are not a scheduled bank. So in this case, in the World Bank and in multilateral development banks format, in the bid document, a clause is there that all such banks will have to be seconded by an Indian bank. So all the banks who are issuing the PSBG internationally, an Indian bank can associate with them, and they can second whatever they are telling. So that will guarantee that PSBG is correct. Also, the next question was, what is the guidelines on acceptance of bid costing less than estimate? So some guidelines has been raised by the World Bank in this regard. So some document is there, which is a guidance document. So more details can be sought from me offline. Now the third was that how we can handle IT system security residing at home. So the thing is that most of us are not working in a secured manner. Whenever we are doing the office work, we are protected by virtual private networks. But when we are doing all the work in our private space, like accessing emails and looking at videos, it is very difficult to protect. So so we need to have some inherent system in our personal space so that this can be done. The other question was, what are the ways of shortening of supply chain, which can be more useful in future Black Swan events? So the thing is that the same issue was covered by Mr. Batra in his slide, that re-sorting or near sorting, all these things are very important. We need to do more. We need to develop suppliers who are more localized. We need to shorten the supply chain so that the lead time is less, the uncertainty is less. So then of course we will be able to respond to the supply chain more emphatically. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Okay, guys, now we move to our next eminent speaker around, Ajay Babu. Ajay Babu is the general manager with Lawson Tubro. He has wide experience in Middle East, Asia, and India. He's been a good project manager. He has dealt wide range of activities for oil and gas, for pharma. With this background, I leave the floor to Ajay Babu to cover his. Ajay Babu, yours.
Yes, thank you, Batraji, for giving me the opportunity to be on this platform. Arun, you can take out that. I can bring my slide in.
Slide. Yeah, it's coming up, Ajay.
Yes. Good evening to all of you. I think, thank you, Batraji, for inviting me on this platform. I think it's a good interaction, and you nicely organized from multiple sectors. And I am coming from a EPC project business, engineering, procurement, and construction. Like other colleagues, panel members of touch upon oil and gas, IT, as well as public sector. I think most of the people, when we're talking about supply chain, people talk about the automotive industry, generally take as a benchmark as a reference. But I'm here to bring out the variety of complexity of a supply chain involved into EPC project business. I think you will all appreciate at the end of the day. Before starting that, I just want to give a disclaimer that these views expressed by me are not necessarily of my personal opinion, not necessarily of my company. But I must have taken some references of my operations, what I do day in and day out.
Sorry, Ajay, I think the voice is not clear. Some people are sending the note.
Hello?
Yeah, voice, no, it's okay. Yeah, come a little close to the mobile.
Yeah.
Not better.
Good. What I'm just trying to tell you is the disclaimer. Whatever the opinions, sharing thoughts is on from my personal friend and not on necessarily of my company. But I must have used some of my daily operations, what we are doing there. Let me give you a quick overview on our operations to set the context. I work for a supply chain management in the Department of Power Transmission and Distribution independent company. This is a part of L&T construction. We are into EPC project business. Our businesses, we are divided into 7 business units in international and domestic. What it is, we are this power transmission distribution, we address the businesses into EHV substations, utility power division, transmission lines, renewable energy in domestic area. And we have similar same businesses, but referred as a business units in Asia, which covers some 7 countries like Malaysia, Thailand, Cambodia, Philippines, and Thailand, Myanmar, and Laos. Similarly, we are also in Africa, about 9 countries: Morocco, Tanzania, Kenya, Algeria, Egypt, Sudan, Ethiopia, Mozambique, Botswana. And all the another BU is a Middle East BU that is called 5, that covers some 5 countries: UAE, Saudi, Qatar, Oman, and Kuwait. What we do is our complexity is a range of client base. We have, for example, in India, it is like a power grid, NTPC, nuclear power corporation, central power boards, state utility electrical boards, private developers, oil and gas companies, more precisely, and state utility companies, and each the countries wherever I referred, there also we deal with the state utility companies like Karama in Qatar, Saudi Aramco in Saudi, Deva in Dubai, Abu Dhabi, say local power development companies, and all. These are all my client base, our client base. Similarly, our vendor base is also so complex. Wide range of vendor base from domestic to SAARC nations, and also in Asian countries, Japan, as well as South Korea, China, Russia, UK, European Union, and US is limited, but more of some of the majorly of GCC countries. And it also brings us some logistic moment. When you think of a project business, we are part of the domestic moment, including some of the times high value and high volume and heavy lift equipment. We do move from critical equipment to mountain regions. Like we recently done one major substation in the highest peak in the Himalayas. Then also it is we also extensively logistic networks we operate to carry out the high seas around the globe to cater various this project supplies, where I refer to my supply base to project base to bring those equipments and deliver to the project sites. Then the complexity in our ICM is also covers the wide range of product range, which I refer to multiple project businesses. Similarly, it covers each project come with a unique set of equipment which need to be compliant to the client specifications and requirement. It can be an oil and gas company, a client. It can be a utility where there is a set standards are governed by the local systems and the procedures. So that makes us some limitation on the vendor base as such. As a supply chain, the process involves is identifying the, generally as soon as we get the project, identifying those requirements, then mapping those materials based on the client approved vendor base, identifying the what is the currencies involved, or the metal requirements for hedging, whether study that contract terms to understand the project requirement, vendor negotiations, and contract finalization, then monitoring of the manufacturing clearance issue, taking approval of the engineering drawings, then monitoring those supplies on time to reach. The major challenge in the project business to appreciate is you imagine a substation construction. It involves a multiple equipment from multiple vendors from multi locations. You need to align. It can be a small item, it can be a major item like a transformer, it can be a cable, it can be a GIS. These are need to be a timeline factored manufacturing clearances, managed with the followed by production and client inspection and dispatch clearance, followed by the logistic management to ensure those all reach at a point of time to the project site. So the timing would be the key, and managing the project supply chain and overall to bring complete visibility as well as in a timely manner is the more important for a successful of any project. Now let us go into how this pandemic taught us a new lessons, what we believe we are doing wonderful job all these years. Let me start with seeing that some of the steps taken to fight this crisis situation when we just got a first feeling in the month February mid. Even I planned for a visit to China, and I processed my visa ready and everything, and I want to take the ticket. Then I realized we thought it's a holiday mood in China. Then suddenly this has come up, pandemic in Wuhan. Then restriction on the travel. I forced to hold back my travel to scheduled visit to visit some of the renewal business structural procurement I planned for. While we appreciate that situation, what some of the steps we have taken internally, the thing is first, anything easy to recognize this is an unprecedented situation. This is a COVID-19. Whatever happened, first you should recognize this is a situation where you have to accept, and then only you can think of alternatives, what are the issues around, and how to move around and come out. Then immediately, by the lockdown or by the time more visibility came into the Indian shores, the top priority has become the safety and health of the associates. It is you must be seeing in a news articles in the construction business. We have about 230,000 employed laborers working in multiple sites across. The management immediate thrust is given to the safety of those people, how to secure them, keep them in the labor camps and provide those rations as well as the health kits and the sanitization of the camps and all. Similarly, at the same time, our supply partners just started meeting. More importantly, in a construction business in EPC, we used to envy, we never had an opportunity to work from home. I think that this is a COVID as a new norm for a construction company like us to start a work from home. Personally, from my 30 years of experience, I never had that opportunity. Where some of friends says we work from IT company working from home. But I just want to stress here the COVID-19, most of us thinking it is it created a lot of havoc in the system, but I see it has created a lot of opportunities. What are those opportunities? Something like unimaginable in our operations. We very quickly switched over seamlessly into a home operations, work from home. I never imagined that. I think within a week time, we all networked and systems are working. We are up with a new software where it is MS Teams. We don't have a week back, and within no time that has come, and we were comparing the softwares available in the system market, and these people have added a lot of features what compared to the other things, and it's a nothing but a virtual meeting. Then we had a series of daily calls, group meetings, management connect. Main importantly is our top management has talking to all of the employees, and they continuously keep in touch. Then we have an organization level, then at a BU level, then at a individual department level. We were connecting each other on a daily basis, and there were a lot of management talks, and at the same time, to keep engaged, our HR taken certain initiatives of arranging some from the US Business School, some of the very well thought webinar series. This is the time where we also come into picture is a lot of coordination of cross-functional departments. Then we also formed a crisis management team, formation of work groups for each topic, like a supply chain separately, cost, and taking care of the health of the people, employee health. They drafted a do's, do nots, what is to be done. Anybody is traveling out of the cities where they employed. These are all the guidelines immediately were circulating on a regular intervals. Similarly, cash preservation is the most important thing, which our finance was looking at it. Then the communication is the key, and keep everybody on virtually in connect. Then social responsibility, our management taking a lot of initiatives wherever the infrastructure is available that leverage it to local governments and central government. Then most importantly for our business side of it, we have started working on a scenario planning, analyze options, what is the major impacts that has created this COVID into to the business. So I see most critical thing for us a project business is our customer is the key. Customer gives the business, and then we are a EPC contractor, then we have a supply base. Then how do I address, unlike my other panelists described, they are into different business like IT, work from home is a culture. So there may not be major impact. But for me, the type of business we are in, we need to align how our supplier is impacted and how he responded and how that I have to translate it to my client, my customer. So for example, if you see the slide, we have mapped immediately what happens is the pandemic stops or delays delivery due to force majeure coronavirus that reaches you, and you need to translate this. You have to revisit all your contractual obligations and first establish whether this is a genuinity or not. Whether there could be some, what is force majeure? Force majeure is a situation where parties cannot perform their obligations. This is an extraordinary event beyond human control. It reveals then what this helps is why we incorporate such a force majeure clause is it relieves both the parties from contractual liability, contract liability, and prevent they will release the obligations of each party to the others. So it is a matter of it is more of a contract administration, and you are a supply chain manager as a core into this activity. So you need to collect the sufficient correspondence and backup communication from your suppliers. You need to align to your contract document what you have with your customer, and you have to issue a letters. that is not reasonably well drafted or well sufficiently caused, if not supported by a proper justification, you need to review the basis of for suppliers claiming the force majeure. And similarly, the client also will get back to you. If it is approved, then it is all right. Otherwise, you need to revisit and see how this can be communicated back.
Okay. Yeah.
Similarly, we also have.
Can you go just a little faster because we are already.
Yeah, I agree. Few minutes. Response to managed procurement, three components we touched upon. The stabilize the supply chain. That is the first important. Even my previous panelists also told the same subject. Then how do the first you are when you understand this is a COVID is a situation where it's a pandemic and you have to accept. Then you have to understand where the origin of the materials are coming from, equipments are coming from. Then we have to create a war room. We have just find out how the daily basis we used to evaluate the change of the situation, which are really impacted. Then we also address the force majeure as a team of people, experts from the legal, procurement, and the contract side of it. Then harvest cash and cost opportunities. Leverage your supply chain virtual war room through cash office, transparency, what is the inflow of the, since you are stopped completely your activity and your inflow is completely affected. So vis-a-vis your output, you have to manage whether those are the things which the equipment are coming. Are you in a position to bill it as a full, what are your payment terms with the end customer? Then you also have to assess the capabilities of critical suppliers financially, whether they are okay or not, and wherever required, we have managed some of the suppliers, A grade, high value suppliers, or the MSME suppliers, whom we should release the cash, whom we can hold back, and what the type of relation we are having. Those have been reviewed. We also worked on the cost models and to drive the renegotiations wherever required. And it is a more of a cost sharing. What is the opportunities? There is a huge reduction in the commodity prices and currency depreciations happened. Then we also prepare for the rebound situation. When it is a rebound, whether are we ready for that? Have we created a models, value chain disruptions, set up cross-functional demand planning. Then we also categorize the suppliers and the logistics risk across the thing. As I explained, it is a geographically spread businesses. It is necessary for us to see which area is really impacting and which is the critical equipment, which stuck up at which port, whether can I do anything, whether I can pick up, and any alternative options are available or not. So what I suggest is a cross-functional teams have been established, and this is what to identify the value chain disruptions, where that exactly the disruption happened, and how do we address. For that, what are the options available? Then we also look at what are the, actually it's about 90, it is in the month of February, and March is our financial closure. There are a lot of equipment on the sea, high seas. About $80 million worth of equipment is about to reach the shores or the specific project sites. And all those things we have to rework and find out how to address, and whether to keep it in the, some of the ports they didn't allow, some of the banks we didn't get the documents. For all these things, scenario planning, when it can come to the project site, by the time some of the project sites are closed. So we are making a lot of if, but, and come out how the situation evolve over a period of time. For that, we were doing a lot of planning or dynamically to address those situations. Then constantly readjust our demand plan also similarly. Similarly, that supply risk assessment, how do you do this? As I mentioned, project-wise status, each project you pick up and see what are those equipment, from where it is coming, whether that supplier is in a risk zone, or is it in a pandemic just started or about to start, and what are the balance supplies, when are likely that likely to pick up those things. We also did a lot of spend intelligence. Who are all our high value suppliers? And there are certain suppliers, major key players, is a common thread among the multiple places and multiple projects. So those guys, we had a business talk at the topmost management level that leveraged certain aspects of risk to bring out the to bring those equipment, or what can be done, how to defer certain payment terms, or is it possible? Those are the thinking we have done, applied those logics. Then similarly, supply intelligence, risk intelligence, geopolitical supply risk. These are all the factors we see. Each factor we applied, these are all the levers we applied and saw what could be the impact and are we ready for that. Now let me come back on the rebound plan. When what this all taught us, this pandemic, put your supplier at the center of your considerations. And our decision should be a data-driven decision making, and value drivers should be shifted from cost reduction to risk-based value addition. Earlier, we used to take only L1, L2, but now are you applied in every decision, supplier selection? Have you put your risk on a risk-based value addition? Whether this country is safe, whether this supplier is safe, what is your scenario planning, plan A and plan B. Earlier we used to do, okay, there is if this fellow fails, there is only a L2 supplier is available. Even L2 or L3, now the situation is we need to have a strong plan and B, which can be executable as scenario changes. That is the concept we need to develop as a supply chain managers for the future. And earlier we were not looking at a supplier financial, we do one analysis and we create a supply base. But now the situation really gives an opportunity and see that your financial stability of your supplier will be a high priority when you are selecting a suppliers. The planning is vital and visibility is the key for you to leverage your, see how things are changing, evolving, to take a decision making based on your data-driven decision making process. Map and categorize suppliers and transport risk. Okay. What I just want to conclude is some of these mantras we learned in these last 3 months. If there is one thing that is certain in business, it is uncertainty. You cannot wait and see, okay, it is only for 3 months, 2 months, what is that? So this taught us that yes, always there will be uncertainty, you need to plan for that. So adapt to new normal, learn to navigate through dynamic scenarios. There are likely changes and you cannot avoid that. You need to build a case, build an options for dynamic scenarios, and you should be able to apply and adapt. Then there are also possibilities to become reality surpassing the proto test. If you see a lot of aspects now, there just only think as a possibilities for 5 years. You never moved an inch. But this is a time where it has surpassed all the proof of concepts are fast forwarded, and the early adapters are the winners. A lot of things, even including your vaccine development, it has created a sense of urgency. I think they are bypassing some of those tests which would have taken years together. But today this technology is playing a very critical role. So we all need to leverage it. It can be artificial intelligence, it can be anything. So how do we use? As of now, I see the technology mainly in the supply chain part, we are using as a tool for processing order and all. But how do we incorporate artificial intelligence, decision making, and through the risks coming through your procurement process? Early identification of those risks, from which place and which country, how things are evolving, and do you have any check process? That type of intelligence systems we need to develop over a period of time. This is a great opportunity I saw to redefine the SCM process and rewrite certain procedures. We witnessed a speedy transformation in many areas, mainly in leveraging technology. As I mentioned, the MS Teams. I want to take a minute and I want to give a real life examples of 2 things.
We should have just quickly because we are losing
Yeah,
time.
these are very interesting cases. Like, for example, the scenario I explained of my business and equipment sourcing and inspection and client base involved. To arrange one inspection by a client for a factory, we need to use to plan in advance of a minimum of 2 months, 3 months, and put the tickets and visit the plant readiness, so many things. And but today they virtually completely eliminated, and we are able to manage virtually by Google Glass. Recently, we carried out one inspection, a transformer in Germany. A client is in Dubai, and they managed the inspection seamlessly and no time it took. This is one thing. And similarly, when our day-to-day affairs in a business meetings, people need to plan, come, ticket booking, even within my operations, booking a room, available to the people, pulling all those things in a time is a task. But today, with the MS Teams, I can switch in, schedule a meeting, and at no moment the people are all virtually available, and we are able to take a decision, push with a lot of things seamlessly and very fast. I
Ajay,
think we are in a situation, an unprecedented hard to model. This is an opportunity crisis. COVID challenged the globalization. I think if you see last 2-3 decades, where Batraji was telling, the globalization, we were talking from last 2-3 decades, and we came to a very good extent, and we got a benefit of a lot of this. But at the same time, though I'm talking about localization, but my opinion is we need to bend but want to break this crisis. This is very hard to model, and this is taught us a lot of lessons. But how do we cap it is what my final thoughts are: bend but don't break. You you create a resilient, flexible, and adaptable supply chains, keeping your VUCA world in your mind. Thank you, Batraji. I
thank you,
think
Ajay.
just come to an
Is short of time, so I will not
yeah,
pose
yeah.
questions to you.
Do
So
you
I
want me to take that question? Or?
no, not this time because the time is
Okay,
short.
okay,
I
okay.
think I'm not doing it justice to Brisbane.
Yeah.
So Brisbane has got, and I'm again sorry to all the participants. I think give us another 15 minutes. I think we'll be able to close up and then thank everybody. So Brisbane, I mean, he's a wonderful, he has been working with British Telecom as a director. He is now head of the Uber procurements, dealing with the whole Asia and Pacific. He's got a wonderful experience on the service side, all the service sectors and transportation. So I leave the floor to Brisbane. Please go ahead. And sorry for
Thanks. No, that's fine. I hope everyone is able to see my screen. I know I'm the last, and we have limited time, but I'll ensure I do the justice. Don't take more than 8 or 9 minutes. Quite habitual of doing more in less. I think that's how Uber also works. Getting the maximum utilization of the minimum resources. Still, in case anything which I don't cover today, you guys can reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm sharing my LinkedIn ID here. My name is quite unique, so just type it and you will find it easily on any of the platform. So I'll be talking about basically the e-commerce in the marketplace business, which actually happens through a cell phone which is in your hand, right? Everyone is kind of using various marketplaces today, be it for shopping or be it for travel or booking a taxi or booking a hotel. I'll talk about how COVID has impacted this particular industry. Most of the examples would come from my industry and my company. So broadly, I'll talk about what we generally buy, because most of the times people ask me, do you buy cars? No, man, we don't buy cars. Does Amazon or Flipkart buy material? Answer is no, they don't buy the material which is shipped to your home. I mean, they have their own warehouses, different companies which buy them, but then they are more of the marketplaces here. So what these companies generally buy, and they actually buy in many $1 million. If I talk about my portfolio of Asia Pacific, I manage close to $1 billion of most of the items that are listed here. So things that we buy vary from tech infra to support, so that people can access the application even at the lowest bandwidth wherever they are in the world, whichever telecom partner they operate with. So those are certain things that we do. Cloud telephony, so that people can connect with each other. Contingent labor is a significant spend that we have, because this is a asset light model wherein we work with the contractual staff, outsourcing staff to get the services delivered. A lot of acquisition marketing, which typically involves how to get new customers or buyers, for your services. How do you manage your brand? What are the research and insights which basically decide your strategy, say for next week, next month, next year? So this is what we do. We do a lot of gig force onboarding. Gig force, I'm sure you would be aware of. There's the new gen, blue collared, and those professionals who are part of the marketplace. They are known as the gig workforce or gig force. We work on their onboarding, trainings, and their life cycle management. A lot of spend happens on the safety, compliance, and security of services, which involves things like doing a very basic background check of a driver, police verification of a courier guy who comes at your home, and driving a lot of things through the contact center after that, because people need to reach out to someone on phone to get answers and do write emails or through in-app messaging. So we spend significant money on that. So what were the typical challenges that most of these companies faced when the COVID happened? I can talk about my company. Our business became literally zero. Zero means literally zero. We did not earn a single dollar for few weeks. Same goes with a lot of our competitors and people in this business. They were not earning anything, which means the business priorities changed. Hence, new categories came into discussion that we are not doing this. So what should we do? One typical example I can give about Uber is, while we were not doing any cars on ground, we developed a solution called Uber Medic, wherein we were transporting patients, we were transporting doctors. We started delivering essential services to people through our cars. In some cities, if you open up your app, you will see a new product called Uber Connect, wherein you can actually book an Uber Connect, give a parcel to someone and put an address where it will get delivered. It's like a courier service. So these were the products that were developed in 3 nights, 4 days kind of a thing by our strong technology team. So this is how we kind of started adopting for the new products, and definitely the procurement thing also changed. We had challenges around the retainer models and all, because that goes very, very that's quite common in the marketing space. You have a retainer model. When we were not doing any branding, we were still paying for those marketing agencies. There was no transaction, but still the payment was being done. We had a lot of contractual stuff, which I said is generally more than the headcount that we have on our payrolls. Who does servicing for us? It was a cost on us, but then the government guidelines were protecting them. We could not ask any person to leave the organization. We were paying the full salaries to them. And then we had the reduced spend and headcount rationalization happen. You might have heard about it. In most of the companies, a lot of layoffs happened. We also went through it. So those were the challenges. How sourcing team kind of basically manage those things. The good part of our organization and most of the people in this marketplace is the flexibility. We are a tech-based company. One problem comes, we find a solution for that immediately. The speed of execution is very, very fast. We don't get into too many meetings or too many approvals. Just few people talk, everyone is empowered, put a solution, make sure that this is compliant and as per guidelines of the government, deliver it. So we did that. We came with a lot of new products, as I mentioned, which is like NPIs, new product introductions. We did a lot of power mapping, wherein we reached out to the CEOs and CXOs of the organizations. We spoke to them about moratorium on a lot of projects. That's where I think we have that power, wherein our most of the interaction happen with the management of our suppliers. Some of them will be working with you also, but that's how we basically run our organization. It's a very thin procurement organization. It starts with the top person in the management side, be it a telco. That's how we basically operate. Did a lot of renegotiations with the agencies. We moved from large agencies to boutique agencies so that we can reduce our cost. And all these things happened quite quickly in our organization. I can say in 3 to 4 weeks we had sorted things out very clearly for procurement. Whatever problem came in, we sorted that. We changed our operating model for the organization. I had a very strong category-based model for APAC. I changed it. I can say it was just one meeting, because people are mature. I told them, I think this is not how we should work. You start focusing 50% on your category, but be ready for 50%, which you have never done. So this is how you guys can grow, quite quickly. So that worked perfectly fine for us. Then if I talk about So my slide is, yeah, sorry. And this is my last slide, by the way. If I have to talk about the new normal, because I did get a couple of questions to answer on the new normal. So if you understand what the customer demand, customer here is, every single person who uses the services of a marketplace. For example, if you're ordering something from a shopping portal, you want to ensure that the material that is delivered at your home is a contactless material, right? It is safe. It has been sanitized. If you are taking a ride in a car, has the car been, sanitized or not? So these are very, very basic things which a customer demand today. How do I trust you and your company for the services that you are giving to me? I am okay to pay slightly extra for the safety. So this is what came to us from a lot of insights, but that still means, if you're increasing your price, you still have the risk of losing the customer. On the other hand, what are the stakeholders asking from the procurement team? They're still asking for cost optimization. They are saying, while the business is down, we still want you to work on the supplier pricing. We want you to tell us what is the need that we have versus what is the want, which means if we were buying 100 things, tell us which are the only 20 things we should buy and which are the 80 things we should remove from our procurement for the next few months. So those were the stakeholder asks. We were asked to look at what is it that the competition is doing and how do we ensure we do better than that. So that involves a lot of competitive analysis that is done by the procurement team. We generally do it for our suppliers as a part of the routine process, but in organization like us, we look at how our competition is also doing their procurement strategy and other things, and we try to do slightly better than them, and the same goes true in the vice versa mode also. Now, if I have to talk about how can procurement support in the new normal, broadly I've mentioned three things here. And most of these things might have been addressed by the previous panelist. First thing is revisit and redesign your supplier and supply management strategy. Work with the suppliers who are flexible. And I can give you a couple of examples of flexibility. Had anyone ever thought that Flextronics will start manufacturing masks? Had anyone ever thought that Maruti and Mahindra will start manufacturing ventilators? Same thing is what we are doing with our suppliers. We ask them, what is your core skill set and can you do something which you're not doing today, and we ask you to do. And honestly, we got a lot of suppliers who kind of started doing this. One of the example I can give you is the security agency which is deployed in our office. They opened up the distribution center for PPEs for our drivers. They said, we actually do a lot of ATM fulfillment, we put cash, but now we are not putting cash because there is a lockdown. So we told them, why don't you use your van to deliver the PPEs? They said, yeah, that's a great idea. We will still earn the money, right? So those are the type of supplier base that, marketplace companies would be keen to work with, and ideally hold true for everyone else. Be an entrepreneur, get out of the silos, become a part of the business. This is what my recommendation to everyone would be. This is how you can actually add value to the business. Don't just think that, this is my process, this is my procurement policy, this is how I should deliver. Understand what business demands, what is it that they need, and deliver as per that. Use data science for near future, short-term and long-term strategies. So, we spoke a lot about AI, we spoke a lot about, availability of data, but are we still using data for planning the next day? Answer is no. There is no harm, thinking, okay, tomorrow if emergency happen, what is it I should do? So use your data pretty well on that. Some of the skills, these are my personal views. One should, start adopting in procurement. Honestly, I know a lot of people who have adopted these, and they are the one who actually, are growing at a much faster pace than most of the people. So these are some suggestions I have. Think of a business acumen than a procurement acumen. Don't think that, that this is my procurement policy and this is how it should work. Think how business is running, and if you have to change your procurement policy to align with business, or the vice versa, have, that courage to get them done. Have the flexibility and speed of execution. Don't go by, the timelines that a MSA will always take 3 months or 4 months. Why can't we do a MSA in, say, 1 week or 2 weeks time? Why can't we negotiate, say, in 30 minutes? Why do we need 5 rounds of negotiation? So these are some skills, which a procurement person should adopt. Treat supplier as a partner. We talk a lot about it, but if you really treat your supplier as a partner, there are high chances that he will be very, very flexible with you and start, serving you. One of the example I gave was a security agency doing, something which they had never done. We suggested, they accepted, both, the parties benefited out of that. And the last one is learn the complete sourcing. We spoke a lot about AI, robotics and all. See, you might have seen that a lot of transactional activities are being done by robots. It will continue, taking some part of procurement always and will, keep automating. So there's no harm for a procurement person to start understanding how does a contract get written, what are the legal clauses, how does the spend analysis work, what is SRM, why do we need to divide, those things between multiple functions in procurement? Can one person learn end to end? So these are some of, the guiding principles I and my team actually learned in last 3 months, and I thought I should share that with you. So broadly, these are a few things that I had to share. I hope I was quick enough. I'm not too sure, but then yeah.
Thank you, Brishpan. But before we close, I think if you can answer one of the key questions coming from many people about the future job opportunity and job losses, both. If you can touch that.
Sure. Sure, Mr. Batra. So I know I have been asked this question by a lot of people on LinkedIn. In fact, from my couple of team members who lost their job in, my team also and global team also. See, people did come back saying, while the supply chain is growing and everyone talks about this being the core function, then why supply chain people are losing jobs or procurement people are losing jobs? See, what we need to understand, when an organization decides layoff, they don't generally pick up one function or two function. They have to be equal with everyone, and that's how they kind of do that. So thinking that why procurement got impacted, rather than that, one should start thinking, okay, this was an organization decision, it has impacted all the functions. But yes, people in procurement will get impacted, especially the ones, that's my view again, who are still doing a job which is which can be digitized. That is one thing. And second is, if you are not becoming a part of the organization, remain a part of the supply chain or a procurement team, definitely organizations would start thinking, do I really need those people or not? I mean, I can talk about my example. If I have to pick, fortunately I don't have that setup in my team, but ever if I have to think, I will always think, who is the person who cannot change or cannot be the change agent and cannot learn the complete art of procurement? I will always pick that person. So job losses would happen, but it will not only happen in procurement, it will always happen in all the other areas. But as Vijay also mentioned earlier, these are basically the jobs which are changing. So please learn the art of strategy, because strategic sourcing can never be automated in next 2-3 years, at least as far as I know. Procurement functions can be automated.
Certainly. Thank you, Brishpan. I think looking at the time, I don't want to extend it further, but I know there are many questions. I can see in the chat around 85 something. Half of them are questions. What we will do, I think, in respect to all our participants who have spent so much time, we will certainly get back. I'll share all this question with the panelists, get the feedback, and then share the answer with you. And we want to thank all the participants for their patience, and also thank our panelists who have been kind enough. I know, Brishpan, sorry to you, you were the last, but you had to wait a lot. But anyway,
no problem, sir, no problem.
All the ones, I think with this, I want to thank all the panelists. I know we had something on survey, which I can send you later. So what I can do is I'll send the survey questions. I know we did only 6, so our rest also I'll send it. So we'll try to summarize the story and share with everyone. Well, thank you again. As I said to you in the beginning, it is again disruption series, COVID disruption series number 1. So next series will be also coming up, the mid part, and then the last would be the downstream side. And the 4th I will cover is demand. Because demand management is becoming a very specialized subject now. The forecasting model, what we studied in college, is failing apart. You need a regression system. You need many things around. I've seen with companies like Apple and other big companies, people with PhDs are being hired to do all the thing around. So it's becoming very mathematical. So I think we'll touch it on this one. So with this, I want to thank all the participants and all our panelists. Thanks everyone. But if you have got some feedback, please give it to us so that we can incorporate in our next ones around. Thank you guys. Enjoy the weekend. Have a good time and be safe.